If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to MindShock. This is our Halloween 2021 edition. We will be tackling one of the most famed creatures of the night, that of the werewolf. I am Bruce McGuire, your not so humble host, here with
Sid Irwin.
who's a bit more humble. He doesn't want to mention his IQ range, which or whether he's in the Prometheus Society or not. I always ask, and I don't believe you. Have you answered yet, Sid?
No, I have not. Though I am happy to answer. It's good to be back.
Yes, it's been a while. Where have you been?
That information I cannot disclose, and it would probably bore you more than interest you.
I don't know. I'm not easily bored. This is, after all, MindShock. But to all the listeners out there, hopefully you're gearing up for fun, exciting, non-demon worshipping Halloween. Can't speak for everybody on that, as well as, obviously any of the true crime listeners. Halloween is notorious for missing persons and killing people and various sacrifices. Even if it doesn't appear that way, coincidentally, criminals just happen to kidnap and kill people more on Halloween than other times of the year. Isn't that kind of weird?
I would like to believe so that is, if not for the fact that there is a movie that is literally called Halloween about a serial killer murdering people on said such day. And so much so beloved that there's even another sequel coming out this year. So
Halloween Kills?
Yeah, it took me by surprise. In fact, you could say I was mind shocked to see that they were producing it.
I was not, as that's one of the franchises that doesn't die. Like, it just keeps going and going. But no, even before John Carpenter's 1978 classic of that name, it seems like people just got kidnapped and killed on Halloween, even by supposedly people that have nothing to do with the occult. Like, random people just happen to kill and murder somebody, not necessarily even on Halloween, like the day before, the day after, 2 days before, not necessarily always exactly on Halloween, but like that 3-day range is, I think, the most popular time when people go missing and are killed. And I believe the second most popular is that around Valentine's Day? Somewhere in February, like either early to mid-February or so. I believe those are like the hot spots of the year for crime. So make sure you stay safe out there, both against humans and non-human entities that might be trying to harm you. As always, if you enjoy the podcast, find it interesting, you can donate to our PayPal. Help support the channel. Help us get more mind-shocking podcasts out there with logic and reason at the forefront, unlike any other podcast out there. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications, like and share the podcast, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. You could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier, so check that out. Any questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. All right, Sid, so the topic of the day today is werewolf. So before we dive deep into that, do you believe in the existence of werewolves?
I'm a big believer that anything could be possible, so such a creature could exist.
So you're not going to give us a straight answer? You're going to go JR on us?
I'm trying to stay as consistent as possible. And that's pretty consistent of me, so.
All right, so, and the other thing is, so vampires are probably the most popular creature of the night, wouldn't you say?
Undoubtedly, yes, I would think so, because, just from, again, lots of popular culture, or pop culture right now with so many books, movies, shows depicting the famed creatures of the night, those bloodsuckers, and all the various iterations. So yeah, I can agree with that.
I would say, what do you think the second most popular is? I would say probably, if we're talking physical creatures, probably werewolves, because ghosts are very popular. Probably as popular or more popular than vampires. But if we're talking physical type creatures and monsters, vampires seem to be ranked at number one. Werewolves might capture that number two spot. What do you think?
I would love to say that, since werewolves are probably among my personal favorite. actually are my personal favorite creatures that go bump in the night. But I don't know. I honestly might think zombies might have number two.
Huh. Actually, nowadays it might be closing the gap, but I think all time, like factoring in novels and paintings and mythology, like Native American mythology,
Uh,
seems to lean werewolf, skinwalker. Whereas, yeah, I mean, you have a point nowadays with media. Zombies are definitely playing catch up. But as far as mythology, zombies seem to be relegated mostly to the Caribbean. I believe, what is it, Haiti that had the original zombie myths?
really, I think you might be correct on that.
Yeah, the voodoo in Haiti, for some reason, they have a different style voodoo than some of the other ancient cultures in the world. Obviously, I mean, we need to do a podcast on zombies as well, of course, no doubt. They're definitely playing catch up. Zombies seem to be all over the place now. But throughout
Uh,
all of history and literature, I would say werewolves are probably a firm number two behind
so,
vampires.
so one could argue that because how vampires are in the number one spot, you might as well just put them right there with them because zombies, vampires, they're all counted amongst the undead.
Ah, yes. What about, okay, so werewolves technically are not undead, but what about zombie werewolves?
I have seen depictions of those, and usually they like to depict them as a very terrifying combination that you don't want to face. So yeah, that could be that would count up in there too.
And furthermore, what about zombie werewolves that die in a violent fashion? Do they come back to haunt as ghosts? So they're the ghosts of zombie werewolves?
We could go to that evolutionary point if you wanted to.
Well, not
So,
only do I want to even talk about interdimensional zombie werewolves that die a violent death and then come back to haunt. So can they haunt only in their dimension of origin, or can they do cross-dimensional haunting?
I mean, I can't personally see a reason as to why not, except, huh. I mean, it all depends on if they're tied to this plane of existence based on the vibrational frequency, I guess.
I mean, these are the important questions that really need to be asked. I don't know why no other podcasts are discussing this, but can you think of a more important question, especially in 2021, than that of zombie werewolf ghosts being able to haunt cross-dimensional?
Uh, personally, no. At this juncture, I cannot think of a better question.
So let's go into the origin of the werewolf, and we will attempt to make sense of why this myth developed as it did and why it continues to capture the imagination of people all over the world, and both in our dimension and other dimensions as well. So, just from the Wikipedia, which is a pretty good compilation of factoids, in folklore, a werewolf, aka man wolf, or occasionally lycanthrope, which is Greek for lycanthropos, wolf human, is a human with the ability to shapeshift into a wolf, or, especially in modern film, a therianthropic hybrid wolf like creature, either purposely or after being placed under a curse or affliction, often a bite or scratch from another werewolf, coincidentally, similar to vampirism,
Hmm.
with the transformation occurring on the night of a full moon. Now, while we're on the topic of the full moon, why do you think not as many vampire legends factor in the full moon? So some of them state that vampires are the most powerful during a full moon, but most vampire myths, legends, and stories don't even really mention the moon much at all.
Really, it's actually rather intriguing.
Whereas the wolf, of course, is linked to the moon. I mean, and of course, I mean, that's probably a podcast for another time, because the moon, the lunar calendar, the lunacy that is associated with lunar
Huh.
events,
Lunatics. Let's do this.
the lunatics that come as a result from that. It is tied to the werewolf, of course, and lunar energy and all of that jazz. So any thoughts on that with the werewolf moon connection, or should we just continue on here?
I mean, honestly, if like you said, there's no real, I guess, historical connection that exists between the werewolves and said moon, though we do know, I guess, just found a popular factor to add it in because, wolves like to howl at the moon, or that's what, it's been seen.
Oh,
Um,
that's a good point. That's a really good
so,
point. Although logical assessment, wolves howl not at the moon as well. So how do we
no, yeah.
measure? How do we measure their preference for howling at a full moon versus a crescent moon versus a moonless night? We would have to measure all of their wolf cries and
Exactly.
howls and then measure the frequencies using a large pool. I mean, we need to do a trial study on how often wolves prefer to howl at a full moon versus a non-full moon.
I get you. In all honesty, who knows? Ain't they howl at a full moon? It might be due to some sort of morning ritual in case if a previous wolf may have passed and they decided to just do all of that at the end of that time.
Yeah, like a rooster supposedly crows for the crack of dawn, but when it's a rainy day, they still crow, don't they?
I believe that may be the case.
We need to do a study on that as well to see if there's a drop in frequency on a really cloudy, rainy day.
I can't lie. I can agree with that. There's probably a certain zoologist. That's the term.
Why do you think there are no legends about people being turned into chickens to the sky? I mean, I'm sure you could find some stories somewhere, but why are were chickens not popular?
Um, I'm pretty sure they're pretty popular for jokes to be told, but actual like story
Well,
content.
if you are what you eat, and chicken is like one of the most popular meats to eat, it's one of the most popular foods in the world. You would think were chickens would be a little bit more popular.
Which I can see and question.
All right, let's continue here. Early sources for belief in this ability or affliction called lycanthropy are Petronius, the year 27 to 66, and Gervais of Tilbury, 1150 to 1228. The werewolf is a widespread concept in European folklore, existing in many variants, which are related by a common development of Christian interpretation of underlying European folklore developed during the medieval period. From the early modern period, werewolf beliefs also spread to the New World with colonialism. Belief in werewolves developed in parallel to the belief in witches in the course of the late Middle Ages and the early modern period. Like the witchcraft trials as a whole, the trial of supposed werewolves emerged in what is now Switzerland in the early 15th century and spread throughout Europe in the 16th, peaking in the 17th and subsiding by the 18th. You know what's weird though? With all of the witch hunts and the werewolf hunts, if they were really real and they exterminated all of the werewolves or 99% of them, I mean, this kind of goes parallel with vampires or Bigfoot or any of these other monsters. If they really were real at one point, but they were hunted to extinction, like many legitimate or like many commonly accepted creatures that do exist that were hunted to extinction, why would that be different for these creatures? And that would explain why there's not that many of them running around right now.
Very true.
So let's continue on here. The persecution of werewolves and the associated folklore is an integral part of the witch hunt phenomenon, albeit a marginal one. Accusations of lycanthropy being involved in only a small fraction of witchcraft trials. During the early period, accusations of lycanthropy, transformation into a wolf, were mixed with accusations of wolf riding or wolf charming. Okay, so riding a wolf is illegal? You can't you can't ride on the back of a wolf like you do a horse. I mean, and that you'd be persecuted for doing so. That's kind of weird, don't you think?
It is very odd. Though the wolf is a majestic creature, so I'm not sure.
Well, wouldn't a wolf most likely tear you apart if you try to use it as a horse?
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
And then also wolf charmers, which is quite interesting. And so, I mean, I guess is snake charming the most popular form of animal charming?
Definitely well known, undoubtedly.
You don't
I
hear a
mean,
lot of people talking about wolf charming.
I guess you could. No one rephrase this way, but dog charming, which many people just say dog training, but I guess still technically that would be charming since you made them a loyal domesticated creature that
Well, in that case, cat charming would be also quite popular.
exactly.
Okay, so the case of Peter Stump, 1589, led to a significant peak in interest in and the persecution of supposed werewolves, primarily in French-speaking and German-speaking Europe. The phenomenon persisted longest in Bavaria and Austria, with persecution of wolf charmers recorded until well after 1650. The final cases taking place in the early 18th century in Carinthia and Styria. After the end of the witch trials, the werewolf became of interest in folklore studies and in the emerging Gothic horror genre. Werewolf fiction as a genre has pre-modern precedents in medieval romances and developed in the 18th century out of the semi-fictional chapbook tradition. Do you know what a chapbook is?
I can't say that I do, Bruce. That's a definite first for me to hear that.
I guess a chapbook is just a book for the common chap. In early modern Europe, a chapbook was a type of printed street literature. Produced cheaply, chapbooks were commonly small paper-covered booklets, usually printed on a single sheet, folded into books of 8, 12, 16, 24 pages. They were often illustrated with crude woodcuts, which sometimes bore no relation to the text, much like today's stock photos, and were often read aloud to an audience. So I guess it's kind of like an ancient version of a magazine.
Sounds about right. All right, so continue.
The trappings of horror literature in the 20th century became part of the horror and fantasy genre of modern popular culture. Names. The word werewolf comes from the Old English word werewolf, Werwulf, a compound of were, which means man, and wolf, which means wolf. The only old High German territory is in the form of a given name, Weriwolf, Weriuuolf, although an early Middle High German werewolf, Werwolf, is found in the Burchard of Worms and Berthold of Regensburg. The word or concept does not occur in medieval German poetry or fiction, gaining popularity only from the 15th century. Middle Latin Gerolfus Anglo-Norman Garwolf, Garwalf, Old Frankish werewolf, Wariwulf. Old Norse had the cognate Varulfur, Varulfur. But because of the high importance of werewolves in Norse mythology, there were alternative terms such as Ulfheidin, one in wolf skin, referring still to the totemistic or cultic adoption of wolf nature rather than the superstitious belief in actual shape shifting. In modern Scandinavian, Kveldulf, Kveldulf, was also used. Evening wolf, presumably after the name of Kveldulf Bolfason, a historical berserker of the 9th century who figures in the Icelandic sagas. The term lycanthropy, referring both to the ability to transform oneself into a wolf and to the act of so doing, comes from the ancient Greek leukos, wolf, and anthropos, human. The word does occur in ancient Greek sources, but only in late antiquity, only rarely, and only in the context of clinical lycanthropy described by Galen, where the patient had the ravenous appetite and other qualities of a wolf. The Greek word attains some currency only in Byzantine Greek, featuring in the 10th century encyclopedia Suda. Use of the Greek-derived lycanthropy in English occurs in learned writing beginning in the later 16th century, first recorded 1584, The Discovery of Witchcraft by Reginald Scott, who argued against the reality of werewolves. Lycanthropia is a disease and not a transformation. At first, explicitly for clinical lycanthropy, i.e., the type of insanity where the patient imagines to have transformed into a wolf, and not in reference to supposedly real shapeshifting. Use of lycanthropy for supposed shapeshifting is much later, introduced circa 1830. Okay, so here's the thing though. If it's such a popular disease to imagine you turn into a wolf and act like a wolf, I mean, is that really that popular though? I mean, when people go insane, they don't seem to specifically believe they turn into a wolf, do they? They just kind of go crazy.
I mean, from the outside looking in, yes, that would be the case.
Are
But
you saying from the inside looking out, the crazy people specifically imagined not that they are a wolf, but they have enough mental wherewithal left to think that they're a human that transformed into a wolf?
I mean, it wouldn't be that outrageous. There's definitely plenty of those who claim some rather eccentric things occurred to them.
I know, but how popular is it though? Because if back during the witchcraft trials and werewolf trials, was it really that popular to believe that you're a human and you turned into a wolf, so that's why you're acting like a wolf? I would think, again, I've never experienced this, so I can't speak from experience, so I wouldn't know. But I would imagine that someone going insane isn't really thinking about how they're going insane or what they're transforming into. They're more caught up in the moment of just acting out, almost similar to a fugue state where it's disassociative. So they don't really even think about themselves, so to speak. They're just acting out in pure consciousness as opposed to premeditation of any kind or introspection of any kind.
I can see that and understand it, though you have to look about the times that existed, and usually, again, a fear of the unknown was very, that was a more popular thing to be about, so why not romanticize it into something even more wild than what it is?
Well, what I guess I'm asking is kind of for control. So, for example, I mean, in India, were people hallucinating that do they believe they turned into a Siberian tiger and were ravaged people as a tiger? Because it seems like there's a certain fixation with the wolf specifically. Or why not a bear in other areas? Like, why did they not think they transformed into a bear and then just do bear swipes? Like
Wow.
these massive bear paw swipes as a human. Because if a human truly believes they turned into a bear, they would be doing specific bear swipes, would they not? Because why would they be acting as a different creature if they believe they turned into a bear?
I can agree with that. And that would go more of the popular. Well, it's coming more popular, like you said, with the whole concept of skinwalkers in general being
Well,
more and more brought to life. But
I'm
just
specifically addressing the claim that lycanthropy was a medical condition, disease, where someone simply believes they turned into a wolf. Like that's what they're describing werewolfism as in this context here, going through the Wikipedia. But it seems like if that really was a genuine disease, and I'm not saying there weren't a couple people who might have had that issue, but to believe it's this widespread popular disease, if that were true, wouldn't it make sense that there should be other popular diseases where people are turning into like bears or tigers or coyotes or like skinwalkers aside, because the skinwalkers is more Native American tradition.
yeah,
I'm talking about like medieval Europe per se, where
and
they're not talking about turning into whatever creature you want at will. They're referring to this as a mental disease hallucination condition.
well, again, another thing could be whether or not there's actually any proof beyond. Like maybe someone might have again either depicted as a wolf, and that's what they see it as, or again, people might go with the theory of story and say, yeah, it was a wolf. Because even if people again may have found someone, let's say, mauled, hurt, injured, or whatever, they may not have actually seen said creature. So yeah, it could have been bear. But again, people fearing the unknown, having these issues occur, and if someone says, "Well, this person's transforming into a wolf," that's their thought or what it is, they actually might be afraid. It's like, you know what? Just might be. That might be the only thing that makes sense. I mean, it's very odd. Doesn't make sense at all, but as we know in the past, there's been many things that don't make sense that people have definitely fallen for and promoted. the witch trials and such. Any real confirmation or proof as to whether or not what they're accusing a person of or doing or what's happening is actually happening, other than a simple fear that it may be happening.
Well, do you think it's just mostly like a post hoc fallacious reasoning where it's like, let's explain away these people thought they were werewolves? That couldn't have been it. They must have been referring to the medical condition, therefore werewolves aren't real.
Which I could see and could agree with.
Because I mean, again, if we're being logical and scientific and we're using controls, if it's that popular if this mental disorder is that popular, wouldn't there have to be a certain amount of wouldn't there have to be just a certain amount of cases, particularly regionally, where people would think they're turning into bears or tigers or whatever, mice? I mean, why would it only be wolves? That seems kind of strange, doesn't it?
Like I said, I can agree because after all, during my childhood experience, certain things.
Would it be kind of funny if people thought they were an eagle and then like tried to fly?
It would be. Could very well happen. Probably has happened. I don't know about those people too much because they make it.
All right, well let's continue on here. Slavic uses the term vlakodlak, wilkolak, volkodlak, volkolak. Serbo-Croatian, Slovenian, Bulgarian, Belarusian also has all of these various takes on the werewolf etymology. However, the word is not attested in the medieval period. The Slavic term was loaned into modern Greek as vrykolakas. Baltic has related terms: Lithuanian, vilkolakis and vilkatas, Latvian, vilkatis and vilkasis. The name Vertolak for the Slavic vampire, also meaning ghoul or revenant, is a corruption due to the Russian poet Alexander Pushkin, which was later widely spread by A.K. Tolstoy in his novella The Family of the Vortolak. Composed in French, but first published in a Russian translation, 1884. And there are some pretty... Okay, actually, you know what? Like, in terms of the Native American explanation, Native Americans did wear animal skins. So they both wore bear skins and wolf skins over their back. So somebody from if they were behaving as animals, somebody from a distance could possibly mistake them for like a really big wolf.
Like I said, very possible indeed.
The werewolf folklore in Europe harks back to a common development during the Middle Ages arising in the context of Christianization and the associated interpretation of pre-Christian mythology in Christian terms. Their underlying common origin can be traced back to Proto-Indo-European mythology, where lycanthropy is reconstructed as an aspect of the initiation of the warrior class. This is reflected in Iron Age Europe in the Tierkrieger depictions from the Germanic sphere, among others. The standard comparative overview of this aspect of Indo-European mythology is McCone, 1987. Such transformations of men into wolves in pagan cult were associated with the devil from the early medieval perspective. The concept of the werewolf in Western and Northern Europe is strongly influenced by the role of the wolf in Germanic paganism. But there are related traditions in other parts of Europe which were not necessarily influenced by Germanic tradition, especially in Slavic Europe and the Balkans, and possibly in areas bordering the Indo-European sphere, the Caucasus, where Indo-European cultures have been replaced by military conquest in the medieval era. In his Man into Wolf, 1948, Robert Eisler tried to cast the Indo-European tribal names meaning wolf or wolfmen in terms of the European transition from fruit gathering to predatory hunting. Classical antiquity. A few references to men changing into wolves are found in ancient Greek literature and mythology. Herodotus, in his histories, wrote that the Neri, a tribe he places to the northeast of Scythia, were all transformed into wolves once every year for several days and then changed back to their human shape. This tale was also mentioned by Pomponius Mela. I mean, that's kind of a random story, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I could see that.
So they just changed an entire tribe, changed into wolves and then back. Huh, curious. In the 2nd century BC, the Greek geographer Pausanias related the story of King Lycaon of Arcadia, who was transformed into a wolf because he had sacrificed a child in the
Yeah,
altar of Zeus Lycaeus.
this story I actually recently heard too.
In the version of the legend told by Ovid in his Metamorphoses, when Zeus visits Lycaon disguised as a common man, Lycaon wants to test if he is really a god. To that end, he kills a Molossian hostage and serves his entrails to Zeus. Disgusted, the god turns Lycaon into a wolf. That's kind of random, though. Like, when you're disgusted with somebody, is your first instinct to turn them into a wolf? I mean, like in other fairy tales, they have people turn into frogs or other random creatures. Wolves are kind of awesome, though.
I mean, a lot of Greek stories are very odd. I mean, after all, I think because I was just recently listening to a book talking about the Greek pantheon, in its own interpretation set, but still using certain specific stories with liberties taken. But was it Athena? When it came down to Medusa, apparently Medusa was very vain, and as punishment, Athena turned her into a gorgon with the snakes for hair and such, but also the ability to turn people to stone, which is a very odd thing to do, in my opinion, to teach a person a lesson
We
about
actually have to
behavior.
do an altered history podcast on the whole turning to stone thing, because suppose some people theorize that was some kind of a weapon, and the whole world was turned to stone, and that even certain statues, particularly those that are hundreds, if not years old or older, they're so perfect they actually look like humans that were literally turned to stone. Especially the ones, I think the ones in, was it St. Petersburg, where they have like translucent garments that they're wearing. And so it either looks like a real human wearing this extravagant clothing that was
Right.
literally turned to stone, or they had some kind of super advanced lasers and they were able to make that. But it's kind of curious, very curious. We do have to do an altered history episode on that.
I can agree with that.
So yeah, Zeus apparently, when disgusted, Zeus's default is to turn people into wolves. However,
In
in
this
other
case,
what?
it's in this case.
However, in other accounts of the legends, like that of Apollodorus's Bibliotheca, Zeus blasts him and his sons with thunderbolts as punishment. I mean, that seems a little bit more in tune with Zeus, or punishing.
Like I said, in that case, he was pretty interesting.
Pausanias also relates the story of an Arcadian man called Demarchus of Parasia, who was turned into a wolf after tasting the entrails of a human child sacrificed to Zeus Lycaeus. Okay, so it seems to be when you kill a human, the punishment is to be turned into a wolf. If you kill a human and feed the entrails to a god, you get turned into a wolf.
All right.
He was restored to human form 10 years later and went on to become an Olympic champion.
Huh.
This tale is also recounted by Pliny the Elder, who calls the man Demanatus, quoting Agriopas. According to Pausanias, this was not a one-off event, but that men have been transformed into wolves during the sacrifices to Zeus Lycaeus since the time of Lycaon. If they abstain of tasting human flesh while being wolves, they would be restored to human form 9 years later, but if they do, they will remain wolves forever. I mean, that's an interesting caveat of the curse, is it not?
It's similar to the caveat interpretation where if after being bit by a vampire, if you could abstain from taking in human blood for a certain amount of time, then the virus, in a sense, would pass.
Wait, I haven't heard that. Where did you get that from?
Uh, I'm trying to remember. It was a long time ago when I had seen this, but that was one methodology spoken.
So this is like a temptation type, discipline type deal.
Yeah. There's
That
also the comedy that I remember this one where it's odd and sake decide to take this twist that if I think was it only virgins could be turned to vampires. So yeah, very odd.
Okay, there's variation of that, but do you remember the source for that one?
For what?
Only virgins can be turned into vampires?
Like I said, I just remember that from a comedy. I believe it was called Once Bitten.
Oh, the movie
Yeah,
from the 80s?
yeah, it's a very hilarious interpretation.
I have to revisit that one. Okay, but regarding the taste of human blood, that is very curious. And then again, we're seeing crossover between wolves and vampires with a lot of this stuff. If you haven't checked out our vampire podcast, check that out. We did a vampire origins podcast. And now we're doing werewolves. Okay, so continuing on here, Pliny the Elder likewise recounts another tale of lycanthropy. Quoting Eunthes, he mentions that in Arcadia, once a year, a man was chosen by lot from the Anthesis clan. The chosen man was escorted to a marsh in the area where he hung his clothes into an oak tree, swam across the marsh, and transformed into a wolf, joining a pack for 9 years. So not only is this a transformation into a wolf, but it's not a lone wolf. It's a wolf that goes and joins an actual wolf pack. So do you think the wolf pack of real wolves knows that something is up with this other wolf that was originally a human? Do you think wolf instinct would pick up on that?
They like to depict wolf instinct a lot as, or even say that wolves are very intuitive. So there's a decent chance, though. Again, as a person, well, not a person, but as a wolf that would be outside of the pack, they probably already would be wary, or I won't say dismissive, but
Okay, come on, Sid.
not.
Are you telling me you've never lived with a wolf pack before?
I'm not saying that.
Or
I
maybe were you part of the wolf pack in WCW Pro Wrestling?
I don't know. Again, I can't disclose such information.
What are the true origins of Sid Irwin, and how vicious is Sid? Okay. Um,
Ah,
so these wolves. So you're saying they probably could realize that there's something up with this wolf, but they're so kind that they allow the former human in wolf form to join their wolf pack and prowl around.
very much. If anything, I would imagine in terms of dominance fights, potentially, if they could either take out the alpha or secure some position, then they probably would.
All right, we need to do a podcast on this issue. So when someone is turned into a werewolf and they have to go join a wolf pack, what are the relationships? Is it alpha? What about the sigma wolf? I mean, we have to really explore these relations. And can werewolves be any one of these subtypes? And does it depend on the personality type they had as a human before they were turned into a werewolf to join this wolf pack?
Ah,
These are the important issues, said Erwin. I think this is what all the MindShock listeners really want to know. Okay, so here, continuing on with Pliny the Elder. Okay, so he joins a wolf pack for 9 years. If during these 9 years he refrained from tasting human flesh, he returned to the same marsh, swam back, and recovered his previous form with 9 years added to his appearance. So, okay, so this is very, very non-mystical. When he turns back to the human form has aged 9 years.
oh wow.
So does that lead credence to this possibly being real?
Very interesting.
I mean, that's pretty realistic for a legend, for mythology.
It is.
Ovid also relates stories of men who roamed the woods of Arcadia in the form of wolves. Virgil, in his poetic work Eclogius, wrote about a man called Moirus who used herbs and poisons picked in his native Pontus to turn himself into a wolf. I mean, is that kind of weird? Of all the things you can turn yourself into, would a wolf be number one on your list, or would it be something like Bigfoot? Are there Bigfoot creatures where humans are turned into Bigfoot?
I mean, there's definitely a possible. I mean, after all, I mean, it's again as much as intrigued I am by lycanthropy. Zoanthropy intrigues me as well.
Would a were Bigfoot be called a were Bigfoot or just a werefoot?
Ah,
Is that our next podcast? The MindShock listeners can chime in on what they want covered next. Were Bigfoot or werefoots? Werefoot creatures. Where do the were feet roam?
where do the were feet roam?
Were humans once were feet?
Very well could be.
Were were feet humans at some point, and where did they roam?
So a very, very odd situation.
Where have the were feet gone? What about, and are werefoot creatures also interdimensional?
Oh god.
And if they die, do they come back to haunt as interdimensional were-feet creature ghosts?
Ah.
These are the important questions, Sid Irwin. This is what your IQ is best used for in this world. Well, I mean, is this why you left Mensa? Because they weren't smart enough to understand like these issues that really need to be gone over in depth?
I'm not sure if it's even an issue of understanding, but rather not even asking in the first place.
I mean, isn't that the first thing on everybody's mind when they talk Bigfoot and werewolves?
It should be.
Okay, so continuing on here about this Moiris who used herbs and poisons to turn himself into a wolf. In prose, the Satyricon, written circa AD 60 by Gaius Petronius Arbiter, one of the characters, Niceros, tells a story at a banquet about a friend who turned into a wolf. He describes the incident as follows, quote, "When I look for my buddy, I see he'd stripped and piled his clothes by the roadside. He pees in a circle around his clothes and then, just like that, turns into a wolf. After he turned into a wolf, he started howling and then ran off into the woods." So there you have it. All you need to do to turn into a werewolf is to pee in a circle around you.
Pretty much. That's definitely one interesting interpretation. of it.
I'm assuming this only works during a full moon. I don't know. It doesn't say here. Early Christian authors also mentioned werewolves. In The City of God, Augustine of Hippo gives an account similar to that found in Pliny the Elder. Augustine explains that, quote, "It is very generally believed that by certain witches' spells men may be turned into wolves," end quote. Physical metamorphosis was also mentioned in the Capitulatum Episcopi, attributed to the Council of Ancyra in the 4th century, which became the Church's doctrinal text in relation to magic, witches, and transformations, such as those of werewolves. The Capitulatum Episcopi states that, quote, "Whoever believes that anything can be transformed into another species or likeness, except by God himself, is beyond doubt an infidel." End quote. So basically, that's curious. In these works of Roman writers, werewolves often receive the name versipelus, turnskin. Augustine instead uses the phrase in lupum fuisse mutatum, changed into the form of a wolf, to describe the physical metamorphosis of werewolves, which is similar to phrases used in the medieval period. The Middle Ages. There is evidence of widespread belief in werewolves in medieval Europe. The evidence spans much of the continent as well as the British Isles. Werewolves were mentioned in medieval law codes, such as that of King Knut, whose ecclesiastical ordinances inform us that the codes aim to ensure that, quote, "the madly audacious werewolf do not too widely devastate or bite too many of the spiritual flock," end quote. Okay, so werewolves were such a problem that they actually had to make laws against the werewolves being too vicious. So semi-vicious werewolves who killed only a couple people were okay. That was fine. But if they got too crazy, if they became too crazy and killed too many people, if they devastated too widely, so they can devastate narrowly, I guess, under a small circle of influence, killing only a small amount of people. But as soon as werewolves start devastating widely, they need to be put in check, and actual laws had to be made by kings to get these werewolves in check. What do you make of that, Sid Irwin?
That is a rather odd and interesting scenarios that I can think of.
Well, it's also curious that King Knut said, basically, not devastate too widely nor bite too many of the spiritual flock. So he didn't give a crap if they bit non-spiritual people. And he actually didn't care if they bit only a couple of spiritual people. But when it became too many, that's when he had to put his foot down.
It is hilarious, but also not too surprising.
So werewolves are basically allowed to just go around and kill as many non-spiritual people as they wanted to?
If I remember correctly, especially I'm thinking about the Crusades in general, where you're trying to convert as many people to Christianity and such, saying that's the one true religion, basically. So everybody else was.
Are you saying the werewolves turned the tide in the Crusades?
Very well could be. We do not know this.
Were they a critical factor in victories or losses in battles during the Crusades? I mean, these are the important questions.
I mean, just like in any war, everybody has their weapons of mass destruction.
This should definitely, somebody should write a book on this. Were werewolves secret weapons during the Crusades?
There you go. That's an interesting plot point for anyone who's a rather skilled writer looking for something interesting to do.
Oh man, we might have to do an entire podcast on that because that sounds like there's a lot to discuss there.
I will not deny that.
Lutprand of Cremonia reports a rumor that Bajan, son of Simeon I of Bulgaria, could use magic to turn himself into a wolf. The works of Augustine of Hippo had a large influence on the development of Western Christianity and were widely read by churchmen of the medieval period, and these churchmen occasionally discussed werewolves in their works. Famous examples include Gerald of Wales' Werewolves of Ossory, found in his Topographica Hibernica, and in Gervais of Tilbury's Autia Imperiala, both written for royal audiences. It sounds like some of these guys were really obsessed with werewolves.
Huh.
Gervais reveals to the reader that belief in such transformations. He also mentions women turning into cats and into snakes. That's kind of curious. So women turn into cats and men turn into wolves. Was widespread across Europe. He uses the phrase "que ito dinos hunter." That almost sounds like dinosaur. When discussing these metamorphoses, which translates to "it is known." That's kind of weird. So it is known? What does that mean? That means it's known to everybody that this happens?
Very well might.
Gervais, who was writing in Germany, also tells the reader that the transformation of men into wolves cannot be easily dismissed, for, quote, "in England we have often seen men change into wolves," end quote. So not just sometimes, but often. So he's basically saying there's tons of witnesses here. Huh. Further evidence of the widespread belief in werewolves and other human-animal transformations can be seen in theological attacks made against such beliefs. Conrad of Hirsau, writing in the 11th century, forbids the reading of stories in which a person's reason is obscured by following such a transformation. Conrad specifically refers to the tales of Ovid in his tract. Pseudo-Augustine, writing in the 12th century, follows Augustine of Hippo's argument that no physical transformation can be made by any but God, stating that, quote, "the body corporeally cannot be changed into the material limbs of any animal," end quote. Marie de France's poem Bisclaveret is another example, circa 1200, is another example in which the eponymous nobleman Bisclaveret, for reasons not described, had to transform into a wolf every week. For reasons not described.
Oh, wow.
He just had to. He couldn't help himself. When his treacherous wife stole his clothing needed to restore his human form, he escaped the king's wolf hunt by imploring the king of mercy and accompanied the king thereafter. This is kind of weird, though. So this is stating that the clothing is somehow magical. So if you can't find your clothing, you stay in wolf form? That's kind of weird.
Huh. That is extremely weird, actually.
Okay. His behavior at court was gentle until his wife and her new husband appeared at court, so much so that his hateful attack on the couple was deemed justly motivated, and the truth was revealed. This lie, a type of Breton sung poem, follows many themes found within other werewolf tales. The removal of clothing and attempt to refrain from the consumption of flesh can be found in Pliny the Elder, as well as the second of Gervais of Tilbury's werewolf stories about a werewolf by the name of Chassever. You know what's weird, though? What is this obsession with, like, cannibalism specifically? Because, I mean, does it imply that cannibalism is bad? Because if you were a human, even though you turned into a wolf, you still used to be a human. Because it doesn't say, most of these, it says human flesh, not animal flesh. So I'm guessing as a wolf, you could still eat animals, you just can't eat humans?
I mean, I would more interpret it with most of these horror stories or fairy tales or kind of myths, legends, and such. There's a lot of just human flesh or anything dealing with the human physical form as being something delicious is a very odd thing in general.
Well, do you think there were widespread cannibal problems and they worked in all of these myths and legends to try to scare people into not eating human flesh? Was there a huge cannibal problem that we're not aware of back in these times?
Very well could be. I mean, after all, again, vampires like to drink blood, zombies like to eat brains.
Wow. So is this our new MINDSHOCK hypothesis? The cause of all these myths and legends of creatures of the night is an undisclosed cannibal issue that people wanted to scare kids out of.
Damn it. It's rather mind-shocking if that's the case. Very interesting observation to put in that fashion. I mean, I thought about it, the oddity of it, because even the pop culture history, I mean, pop culture knowledge-wise, just they're showing, like, just in the depictions of shows, movies, even if it's not, again, the classic creatures that go bump in the night, why are these vicious aliens so keen on eating us as a big thing, as opposed to just, again, in Predator, where they're just hunting? No. You got movies like Aliens and even, basically any other ones like that, where the creature is coming out of nowhere and murdering mad humans. I don't understand it. I don't.
Well, here's another mind-shocking theory. It's one of the Bruce McGuire theories. What if cannibalism was super popular and it was kind of erased from history, but they wanted to frown upon, they wanted it to be they wanted to discourage cannibalism, so they had all these myths and legends where basically if you ate human flesh, you could be a vampire or the undead or a werewolf. So it was kind of like appealing to the subconscious in a way to make people, to kind of stem people away from eating human flesh, if eating human flesh was actually really popular. And then it was just so untoward that they kind of just removed it from all the history books, and eating human flesh was like a super popular dish for the past 1,000 years, and we just don't know about it.
It's very possible, especially considering, as I think about it, again, thinking about the Bible, Christianity, in fact, did it not describe Jesus' blood as like wine and such? So,
Huh. That is curious as well. Yeah. Huh. Wow. I mean, this is really, really weird and bizarre, mind-shocking, if you will. But this is what the listeners listen for. So I hope they're getting their money's worth. All right. So, okay. Marie also reveals to us the existence of werewolf belief in Breton and Norman France by telling us the Franco-Norman word for werewolf, garwolf, with a U, which she explains are common in that part of France, where, quote, many men turned into werewolves, end quote. The other thing we're seeing with all this literature, it's not obscure or rare. It seems all of this literature is stating that it's common, or these things happen often. Isn't that strange?
highly.
So it's like almost an everyday occurrence? I mean, this is just so weird. It's just really weird. Because in the ancient Greek tradition, it seems like it was more rare. It was just that one tribe or just the guys that tried to trick a god into eating a human sacrifice. So we're talking a vast minority. But in these medieval and French legends and stories, there's multiple references to it being very common. Huh. Do you think, you know what else is curious? Do you think the werewolf or lycanthropy, werewolfism, do you think it could be genetic and these are descendants from that ancient tribe referenced in the Greek? And then as they multiply, some of these traits or genes could be passed to offspring. So that's why their numbers grew in the Middle Ages. And then throughout the witch hunts, there was just a mass extermination.
Huh.
I mean, you can't argue. Mass exterminations are very popular in history. I mean, you could just look at the past 100 years. I mean, between Hitler, Stalin, and Mao, I mean, they took out hundreds and millions of humans. What if a couple hundred years before that, they focused on taking out the werewolf?
Could very well be the case.
Okay, Gervais also supports this terminology when he tells us that the French use the term gerulfi to describe what the English call werewolves. Melion and Biclarel are two anonymous lays that share the theme of a werewolf knight being betrayed by his wife. Now there's a missed Hollywood opportunity, my friend. Werewolf knights.
Wow.
They need to make a King Arthur version. King Arthur and the Were Knights of the Round Table. I mean, would that not make hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office? I mean, what do you think?
I mean, it could actually be the very truthful, honest, real depiction. Someone may have known the story and just decided to take out the werewolf part.
I got another mind-shocking theory for you. Was knight's armor so restrictive to prevent the human from turning into a werewolf while in the armor?
Or to hide the fact that they might be the type of bipedal werewolf.
You know what's crazy? We need to do a podcast on mermaids, but I just thought of something. There were mermaid knights in certain there were references to mermen knights, mermaids that were knights, and they actually had knights armor and everything.
Oh wow.
I forgot the actual name for them. They had a very specific name, but I wonder if it was the same case for werewolves. Werewolf knights. Oh man. Now we're getting somewhere with this podcast. Okay. The German word werewolf, Werwolf, is recorded by Burkhard von Worms. That's a great name. In the 11th century and by Berthold of Regensburg in the 13th, but is not recorded in all of the medieval German poetry or fiction. While Baring Gould argues that references to werewolves were also rare in England, presumably because whatever significance the wolfmen of Germanic paganism had carried, the associated beliefs and practices had been successfully repressed after Christianization, or if they persisted, they did so outside of the sphere of literacy available to us. We have sources other than those mentioned above. Such examples of werewolves in Ireland and in the British Isles can be found in the work of the 9th century Welsh monk Nennius. Female werewolves appear in the Irish work Tales of the Elders from the 12th century and Welsh werewolves in the 12th to 13th century Mabinogion. So female werewolves have been a thing for a really long time as well, 12th century. In 1539, Martin Luther used the form Beerwolf to describe a hypothetical ruler worse than a tyrant who must be resisted. Wow. Beerwolf. Are these like really drunk werewolves?
They just might be.
Wow. Now that's another good movie idea. The Beerwolf. So instead of Teen Wolf, it's like a werewolf that just likes to get drunk instead of playing basketball. Oh man. Oh man. The Germanic pagan traditions associated with wolfmen persisted longest in the Scandinavian Viking Age. Harald I of Norway is known to have had a body of Ulfhednar, wolf-coated men, which are mentioned in the Vatsndola saga, Haraldskvedi, and the Volsunga saga, and resemble some werewolf legends. The Ulfhednar were fighters similar to the berserkers. though they dressed in wolf hides rather than those of bears, and were reputed to channel the spirits of these animals to enhance effectiveness in battle.
Oh my god.
Okay, so if you were a berserker, you had the option of wearing either a bear skin or a wolf skin, depending on your fighting style. I mean, this is some video game stuff here.
There is some classic. So actually, I was going to talk about that because if medieval wise, like you said about people seeing skinwalkers in the native, in the Americas, potentially just again people who are cloaked in the animal skin. Who's to say that they may not have seen some wild men out there in European countries that just had again people who just wore the skins of said creatures.
Well, at least here we have some logical consistency, right? Because they're not trying to blame insane people that think they're turning into just wolves. Because here we have, I mean, they're wearing both bear skins. Wow, I'm still thinking about the beer wolf.
Oh my
Oh
god.
man, Teen Wolf 2, Beer Wolf.
So bad.
He quits basketball to focus on beer drinking contests.
Ah,
I mean, that's a missed opportunity for the 80s, is it not? I mean, Teen Wolf came out in what, 1985 maybe?
I believe.
That is a missed opportunity. I don't know what they were thinking or not thinking to miss that opportunity. But okay, so also channel the spirits of these animals. Okay, so what does that mean exactly? Is that kind of like a seance, but instead of trying to get a demon or a ghost, you're channeling the spirit of a bear or a wolf to give you extra fighting power? Well, check this out. These warriors were resistant to pain and killed viciously in battle, much like wild animals. Ulfhednar and berserkers are closely associated with the Norse god Odin. The Scandinavian traditions of this period may have spread to Kievan Rus, giving rise to the Slavic werewolf tales. The 11th century Belarusian prince Vseslav of Polotsk was considered to have been a werewolf, capable of moving at superhuman speeds, as recounted in the tale of Igor's campaign. That sounds like it would make another good movie. Vseslav the prince judged men. As prince, he ruled towns, but at night he prowled in the guise of a wolf. From Kiev prowling, he reached before the corkscrew Tmutorokin, the path of great sun. As a wolf prowling, he crossed. For him in Polotsk, they rang for matins early at St. Sophia the bells, but he heard the ringing in Kiev. The situation as described during the medieval period gives rise to the dual form of werewolf folklore in early modern Europe. On one hand, the Germanic werewolf, which becomes associated with the witchcraft panic from around 1400, and on the other hand, the Slavic werewolf or Volkolak, which becomes associated with the concept of the revenant or vampire. The Eastern werewolf vampire. Wow, that's awesome. So there is a werewolf vampire. The Eastern werewolf vampire is found in the folklore of Central and Eastern Europe, including Hungary, Romania, and the Balkans, while the Western werewolf sorcerer is found in France, German-speaking Europe, and in the Baltic. So we have werewolf sorcerers, and then we have werewolf vampires. Why do you think it took so long for like werewolf vampire hybrids to kind of come to the mainstream? I mean, the first movie I can really think of that happening in was Underworld, right?
Yeah, same here.
I would think I would think there was some. I'm kind of getting some vague recollections of maybe like a late 70s, early 80s low budget schlock movie that they tried to like crossbreed a werewolf and a vampire. I don't remember the name of the movie. Maybe you do. Does that sound familiar? Maybe it was a cartoon or something. I don't remember. I remember some kind of like Frankenstein theme where they did some kind of crossbreeding between werewolves and vampires.
There is a chance that such a thing does exist.
And then I don't remember anything at all for like 10, 20 years until Underworld where they did it like officially. But I would also think in comic books that probably was done as well. I mean, it seems like it just, how could it not be done, right? I mean, if there's a comic book aficionado out there that can reference some kind of crossbreeding or some kind of vampire, werewolf, vampire creature, feel free to drop some comments, because it would be interesting to see the origin of such a mashup, so to speak.
Which I can agree with.
All right, so let's move to early modern history. There were numerous reports of werewolf attacks on consequent court trials in 16th century France. In some of the cases, there was clear evidence against the accused of murder and cannibalism, but none of association with wolves. In other cases, people have been... So it seems like cannibalism was an issue. There's a lot of court cases of people cannibalizing. That's kind of weird, though, isn't it? I mean... I know, like, in some places there wasn't a lot of food and stuff, but there's got to be enough. I mean, if there's enough people around to arrest you, wouldn't you think there'd be enough people to trade with to get some food?
Oh,
I mean,
definitely.
it's not like you're talking about a plane crash in the middle of nowhere where, like, you might have to resort to cannibalism. But if you're living in general towns, I mean, you would think you'd be able to find something to eat where you wouldn't have to go out and eat humans.
You would think.
But none of the association with wolves. In other cases, people have been terrified by such creatures, such as that of Giles Garnier in Dole. In 1573, there was clear evidence against some wolf, but none against the accused. Being a werewolf was a common accusation in witch trials throughout their history, and it is featured even in the Valais witch trials, one of the earliest such trials, altogether in the first half of the 15th century. Likewise, in the Vaud, child-eating werewolves were reported as early as 1448. You know what else is kind of interesting? Like, when children are killed or farm animals are killed, they usually blame monsters, like, for example, the chupacabra of Mexico.
Correct, yes.
We definitely need to do a podcast on the chupacabra. Some people think it's, like, demonic, interdimensional. Do interdimensional chupacabra ghosts exist, do you think?
I don't see why not.
I mean, of course, these are the important Halloween questions. I mean, is there anyone on Halloween who has not asked that question?
It's a very good question.
Indeed it is. What about genetically modifying and gene splicing? Let's say a chupacabra and a werewolf. Like, that'd be kind of cool.
Cool. Perhaps a little terrifying, but cool.
And how do we know people aren't already doing that right now?
I mean, we also don't know if there's people performing interdimensional summonings of said chupacabra, werewolf gene splices that also may happen to be knights.
Okay.
So
why are people wasting their time with these Ouija boards when you could be summoning interdimensional crossbred hybrid chupacabra werewolf knights? I mean, answer me that question.
I don't know. I just don't.
Interdimensional chupacabra werewolf knights. I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, is that not the next most popular Halloween costume? I mean, would you not be surprised if next year you're going around the Halloween shops and you don't see interdimensional chupacabra werewolf knight costumes everywhere?
I mean, you gotta think someone has to have it. Someone must just recognize that the trend is on the rise. It's just get ahead of the curve.
I mean, there are some startups that need to get on this. Okay, so, so what I was getting at though is when people go around, eat children, steal children, or farm animals, it's weird how they immediately blame werewolves here. And again, if you're looking at maybe the U.S. or some of these first world countries, a lot of times they blame aliens for cattle mutilations or whatnot.
Right.
What about alien interdimensional chupacabra werewolf knight?
I don't see why not.
If one of them died, would they become a ghost?
Don't know. It very well could. We don't know if they might turn into a zombie first, though. And then once that said zombie dies, then it might turn into a ghost that might be on vengeance seeking peace. We don't know.
Okay, if anybody's playing with a Ouija board, which I do not recommend or endorse, if they're playing with one anyway, it would be curious if they could find an extraterrestrial interdimensional chupacabra werewolf night hybrid that was a zombie that died and turned into a ghost, and to see if they can communicate with one. I know what you're going to be doing on Halloween night.
Yeah, I am probably getting involved in this.
Your schedule just filled up, Sitter.
Oh boy.
Okay, all right, let's try to focus here. This is all very, very mind-shocking. So, a peak of attention to lycanthropy came in the late 16th to early 17th century as part of the European witch hunts. A number of treatises on werewolves were written in France during 1595 and 1615. Werewolves were sighted in 1598 in Anjou, and a teenage werewolf was sentenced to life imprisonment in Bordeaux in 1603. Man, it looks like I watched Teen Wolf should have been this historical drama instead.
There you go.
Henry Boguet wrote a lengthy chapter about werewolves in 1602. In the Vaud, werewolves were convicted in 1602 and in 1624. A treatise by a Vaud pastor in 1653, however, argued that lycanthropy was purely an illusion. After this, the only further record from the Vaud dates to 1670. It is that of a boy who claimed he and his mother could change themselves into wolves, which was, however, not taken seriously. So a mother and son werewolf team. That's another missed opportunity in Hollywood. What's going on? They seem to not be making these movies which really have good potential here, especially King Arthur and the Werewolf Knights of the Round Table.
Yeah.
Although the Chupacabra werewolf hybrid knights, the extraterrestrial interdimensional zombie ghost version of that, would probably do even better.
I can agree.
Do you remember that cartoon from, I think it was the early 90s, King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, where like a team of high school football players randomly traveled back in time and became knights? And it was like the heavy metal version, and like all the bad guys were like dressed in this like techno futuristic medieval armor.
I do remember it.
Now that really, if ever something needed a live action adaptation, it is that. The theme of that show was quite catchy as well.
It was. I do remember it.
I think I might have to make that my Halloween theme this year. And whatever band did that should definitely do the soundtrack for the Chupacabra werewolf interdimensional extraterrestrial zombie night ghosts as well. No question. No question. Okay. At the beginning of the 17th century, witchcraft was prosecuted by James I of England, who regarded werewolves, W-A-R-W-O-O-L-F-E-S, as victims of delusions induced by, quote, a natural superabundance of melancholic. End quote.
End quote. Is
that code word for being drunk?
It just might be.
Superabundance. Wow, that's a good word, too. After 1650, belief in lycanthropy had mostly disappeared from French-speaking Europe, as evidenced in Diderot's encyclopedia, which attributed reports of lycanthropy to a, quote, disorder of the brain, end quote. Although there were continuing reports of extraordinary wolf-like beasts, but they were not considered to be werewolves. One such report concerned the beast of Gévaudan, which terrorized the general area of the former province of Gévaudan, now called Lozère, in south-central France. From the years 1764 to 1767, it killed upwards of 80 men, women, and children. The part of Europe which showed more vigorous interest in werewolves after 1650 was the Holy Roman Empire. At least 9 works on lycanthropy were printed in Germany between 1649 and 1679. In the Austrian and Bavarian Alps, belief in werewolves persisted well into the 18th century. In any case, as late as 1853 in Galicia, northwestern Spain, Manuel Blanco Romasanta was judged and condemned as the author of a number of murders, but he claimed to not be guilty because of his condition of Labichome, werewolf. Wait a second. So instead of pleading insanity, he pleaded lycanthropy? Was that and you know what's funny? Shouldn't that have been a more popular defense? Because if werewolves are real, and if when you turn into a werewolf you have no control over your actions as the werewolf, or very limited control because animal instinct takes over, would you technically be guilty of going around murdering and marooting?
That's a solid question.
And don't you think it's surprising that more people haven't tried the werewolf defense in court?
Considering how popular it is, I'm actually really surprised I haven't used that.
I think Maxwell Powers would have probably tried that defense if he was ever in court.
I could see that happening.
Until the 20th century, wolf attacks on humans were an occasional but still widespread feature of life in Europe. Some scholars have suggested that it was inevitable that werewolves, being the most feared predators in Europe, were projected into the folklore of evil shapeshifters. This is said to be corroborated by the fact that areas devoid of wolves typically use of different kinds of predator to fill the niche. Were hyenas in Africa, were tigers in India. Oh, so I was right about that. As well as were pumas. Oh, that might be my favorite. And were jaguars
That might be mine.
in South America. Wow, were jaguars. That's a missed opportunity as well. What about crossbreeding were jaguars and chupacabras?
It would make for an interesting sight.
And if there were knights, that'd be cool too. Or conquistadors.
Conquistadors, even more so.
The were jaguar chupacabra conquistadors of South America, who happen to be extraterrestrial interdimensional entities that might have become zombified, and if they died, they would have been ghosts.
But what if they were also, beyond that, came in threes and were the original inspiration for the Three Musketeers?
Wow, the Three Musketeers version of were jaguar chupacabra hybrid knights, extraterrestrials from other dimensions who were zombified and then died and came back from the grave and haunted people. Is that your new version of the Three Musketeers?
Essentially. Yeah, essentially.
Wow. An idea is explored in Sabine Baring Gould's work, The Book of Werewolves, that werewolf legends may have been used to explain serial killings. Perhaps the most infamous example is the case of Peter Stump, executed in 1589, the German farmer, an alleged serial killer and cannibal, also known as the Werewolf of Bedburg. So do you think some serial killers like Jack the Ripper or the Zodiac Killer, which I just dropped a podcast on the Zodiac Killer the other week, the most in-depth Zodiac Killer podcast in existence. You can check that out on MindShock. Do you think these people were werewolves as well?
Huh.
Or some kind of extraterrestrial, interdimensional werewolf hybrids of some kind?
There is a potential chance. I can't deny it or confirm it, so the possibility exists.
In Asian cultures, the were equivalent is were tiger or were leopard. Wow. That's interesting. Also, were cats.
Oh, that is very interesting.
Wow, it looks like we're going to have to do some follow-up podcasts with these other creatures. Werecats supposedly are very popular. There's a lot of information on werecats. But let's stick to werewolves for now. Common Turkic folklore holds a different reverential light to the werewolf legends in that Turkic Central Asian shamans, after performing long and arduous rites, would voluntarily be able to transform into the humanoid Kurtadam, literally meaning wolfman. Since the wolf was the totemic ancestor animal of the Turkic peoples, they would be respectful of any shaman who was in such a form. Lycanthropy as a medical condition. Some modern researchers have tried to explain the reports of werewolf behavior with recognized medical conditions. Dr. Lee Illis of Guy's Hospital in London wrote a paper in 1963 entitled On Porphyria and the Mythology of Werewolves, in which he argues that historical accounts on werewolves could have in fact been referring to victims of congenital porphyria, stating how the symptoms of photosensitivity, reddish teeth, and psychosis could have been grounds for accusing a sufferer of being a werewolf. This is, however, argued against by Woodward, who points out how mythological werewolves were almost invariably portrayed as resembling true wolves, and that their human forms were rarely physically conspicuous as porphyria victims. Others have pointed out the possibility of historical werewolves have been sufferers of hypertrichosis, a hereditary condition manifesting itself in excessive hair growth. However, Woodward dismissed the possibility as the rarity of the disease ruled it out from happening on a large scale, as werewolf cases were in medieval Europe. People suffering from Down syndrome have been suggested by some scholars to have been possible originators of werewolf myths. Woodward suggested rabies as the origin of werewolf beliefs, claiming remarkable similarities between the symptoms of that disease and some of the legends. Woodward focused on the idea that being bitten by a werewolf could result in the victim turned into one, which suggested the idea of a transmittable disease like rabies. However, the idea that lycanthropy could be transmitted in this way is not part of the original myths and legends and only appears in relatively recent beliefs. Lycanthropy can also be met with the main content of a delusion. For example, the case of a woman has been reported who, during episodes of acute psychosis, complained of becoming 4 different species of animals. But see, that makes more sense, though, because she's not only being obsessed with or focusing on just the wolf. So that seems like a more legitimate condition. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention the logical fallacy of false dichotomy or false trichotomies or whatever. For false quadratity. Okay. Dichotomy, trichotomy, quadricody,
That's an interesting setup.
quintagi, septicagi,
That's a lot of oddities.
octacagary. All right. So anyway, why not both? It's weird how, again, a lot of these scientism cultists that want to dismiss any kind of mythology across the board, they just grasp at all these straws to try to pretend that everything can be explained away by one or two things. Why would it be impossible for all of the above to be true?
Very true.
And whether werewolves are real or not, these other conditions could be real. So, okay. Let's look at the folk beliefs, characteristics. The belief classed together under lycanthropy are far from uniform, and the term is somewhat capriciously applied. The transformation may be temporary or permanent. The were animal may be the man himself metamorphosed, may be his double, whose activity leaves the real man to all appearance unchanged. That's a curious one, because there are some myths and legends of various kinds, not just werewolves, where the human body remains.
Right.
And then whatever else is going on with the secondary form is only going on with the secondary form, which is curious as well. Maybe his double, okay, and maybe his soul, which goes forth seeking whomever it may devour, leaving its body in a state of trance, or it may be no more than the messenger of the human being, a real animal or a familiar spirit, whose intimate connection with its owner is shown by the fact that any injury to it is believed by a phenomenon known as repercussion to cause a corresponding injury to the human being. So it's kind of like a voodoo doll. So in certain folklore, they're saying here that if you become a werewolf, you have a second werewolf form, and if the werewolf form gets a cut on their arm, the human form would also. Curious, we got some quantum physics going on in these in these myths and legends and folklore. Werewolves were said in European folklore to bear telltale physical traits even in their human form. Those included the meeting of both eyebrows at the bridge of the nose. So there you have it, folks. If you have a unibrow, you might also be a werewolf. Curved fingernails, low-set ears, and a swinging stride. I mean, what does that mean? Is that like the Billy walk, the Vince McMahon billionaire walk?
It very well could be.
One method of identifying a werewolf in its human form was to cut the flesh of the accused under the pretense that fur would be seen within the wound.
Oh, wow.
A Russian superstition recalls a werewolf can be recognized by bristles under the tongue. That's weird. The appearance of a werewolf in its animal form varies from culture to culture, though it is most commonly portrayed as being indistinguishable from ordinary wolves, save for the fact that it has no tail. A trait thought characteristic of witches in animal form is often larger and retains human eyes and a voice. According to some Swedish accounts, the werewolf could be distinguished from a regular wolf by the fact that it would run on 3 legs, stretching the 4th one backwards to look like a tail. How fast could you really run doing that, though?
I honestly couldn't tell you. It's a very strange concept.
That sounds like a new fitness craze, the werewolf workout, where you just run around on 3 legs, holding your leg out, and then you alternate. It's like some kind of advanced Pilates. Werewolf Pilates. Is that a good idea? That sounds like a good fitness craze. I mean, it might be as popular as jazzercise.
Very well could be.
If you haven't checked out the Jazzercise Conspiracy podcast on MindShock, you should definitely check that out. JR and I go deep into the government conspiracy known as the Jazzercise program. All right, continuing on here. After returning to their human forms, werewolves are usually documented as becoming weak, debilitated, and undergoing painful nervous depression. One universally reviled trait in medieval Europe was the werewolf's habit of devouring recently buried corpses, a trait that is documented extensively, particularly in the Annals Medico-Psychologique in the 19th century. Becoming a werewolf. Various methods for becoming a werewolf have been reported, one of the simplest being the removal of clothing and putting on a belt made of wolf skin, probably as a substitute for the assumption of an entire animal skin, which is also frequently described. In other cases, the body is rubbed with a magic salve. Drinking rainwater out of the footprint of the animal in question or from certain enchanted streams were also considered effectual modes of accomplishing metamorphosis. Do you think any scientists actually tried that to see if it worked? Like
Honestly, yes.
If you go drink water out of like a deer print, are you gonna turn into a deer?
I honestly don't think so, but
if any MindShock listeners want to go, if they want to go try that and report back, yeah, just make sure you do it under medical supervision. I mean, who knows what's in that water? The 16th century Swedish writer Olaus Magnus says that the Livonian werewolves were initiated by draining a cup of specially prepared beer. There we have beer again, and repeating a set formula. Ralston, in his Songs of the Russian People, gives the form of incantation still familiar in Russia. In Italy, France, and Germany, it was said that a man or woman could turn into a werewolf if he or she, on a certain Wednesday or Friday, slept outside on a summer night with the full moon shining directly on his or her face. So apparently this only works not only on full moons, but only Wednesdays and Fridays.
That's oddly specific.
So it does not work on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, or Sundays, although it would make sense that it would never work on a Sunday.
So I guess it shouldn't be any stranger than the concept of people only being able to transform into wolves only on a full moon once a month.
Well, this takes it even further. A full moon that's not on a Wednesday or Friday, it would not work.
Oh wow!
It's only full moons that happen on Wednesdays or Fridays. Okay. In other cases, the transformation was supposedly accomplished by satanic allegiance for the most loathsome ends, often for the sake of sating a craving for human flesh. Who the hell has cravings for human flesh?
Apparently, those people back then did not want it to be widely and obviously known.
The Werewolves, writes Richard Verstegen, Restitution of Decayed Intelligence, 1628. What a title. Restitution of Decayed Intelligence. Are certain sorcerers who, having anointed their bodies with an ointment which they make by the instinct of the devil, the putting on a certain enchanted girdle does not only unto the view of others seem as wolves, but to their own thinking have both the shape and nature of wolves, so long as they wear the said girdle. And they do dispose themselves as very wolves in worrying and killing, and most of human creatures. The phenomenon of repercussion, the power of animal metamorphosis, or of sending out a familiar, real, or spiritual as a messenger, and the supernormal powers conferred by association with such a familiar, are also attributed to the magician, male and female all over the world, and witch superstitions are closely parallel to, if not identical with, lycanthropic beliefs, the occasional involuntary character of lycanthropy being almost the sole distinguishing feature. In another direction, the phenomenon of repercussion is asserted to manifest itself in connection with the bush soul of the West African and the Nagul of Central America. But though there is no line of demarcation to be drawn on logical grounds, the assumed power of the magician and the intimate association of the bush soul or the Nagao with a human being are not termed lycanthropy. The curse of lycanthropy was also considered by some scholars as being a divine punishment. Werewolf literature shows many examples of God or saints allegedly cursing those who invoked their wrath with lycanthropy. Such is the case of Lycaon, who was turned into a wolf by Zeus, Lycaon, as punishment for slaughtering one of his own sons and serving his remains to the gods as a dinner. Those who were excommunicated by the Roman Catholic Church were also said to become werewolves. Imagine that as a scare tactic, like, don't become excommunicated or you'll be a werewolf. The power of transforming others into wild beasts was attributed not only to malignant sorcerers, but to Christian saints as well. Omnis angeli boni et mali ex virtue naturali habent postatum transmutandi corpora nostra. All angels, good and bad, have the power of transmutating our bodies. Was the dictum of St. Thomas Aquinas. St. Patrick was said to have transformed the Welsh king Vereticus into a wolf. Natalis supposedly cursed an illustrious Irish family whose members were each doomed to be a wolf for 7 years. In other tales, the divine agency is even more direct, while in Russia, again, men supposedly became werewolves when incurring the wrath of the devil. A notable exception to the association of lycanthropy and the devil comes from a rare and lesser-known account of an 80-year-old man named Thias. In 1692, in Jurgensburg, Livonia, Thias testified under oath that he and other werewolves were the hounds of God. He claimed they were warriors who descended into hell to battle witches and demons. Their efforts ensured that the devil and his minions did not carry off the grain from local failed crops down to hell. Thias was steadfast in his assertion, claiming that werewolves in Germany and Russia also did battle with the devil's minions in their own versions of hell, and insisted that when werewolves died, their souls were welcomed into heaven as a reward for their service. Thias was ultimately sentenced to 10 lashes for idolatry and superstitious belief. I mean, that's not that many lashes. You could probably handle 10, right?
That is a very interesting concept and probably one of the most interesting theories I've heard.
And he was sentenced to 10 lashes for idolatry and superstitious belief.
Oh my.
That seems kind of mild, though. Back in the day, didn't they put everybody to death for those kinds of, or at least, or burn them, or I don't know, 100 lashes? I mean, 10 lashes, isn't that like a relatively easy punishment? I don't know.
And considering some might do that in their sleep, so yeah.
This was in 1692 in Jorgensburg, Livonia. And this guy was 80 years old. They're lashing an 80-year-old? That's kind of messed up, too. Like, because what if he was old and senile?
I mean, there's various forms of torture, punishment, such executed on the elderly and the young. So that's one thing I've come to know. Sometimes such cruelty and punishment and barbarism, it shows no bias.
I mean, that's another missed opportunity by Hollywood as well. I mean, these werewolf knights that descend into hell to battle the devil's minions, that's pretty cool. That should be what King Arthur and the Were Knights of the Round Table should be about.
I could see that.
Remedies. Various methods have existed for removing the werewolf form. In antiquity, the ancient Greeks and Romans believed in the power of exhaustion in curing people of lycanthropy. The victim would be subjected to long periods of physical activity in the hope of being purged of the malady. So there you have it. Exercise is the cure for werewolfism. All you got to do is work out.
Work it out till you drop.
This practice stemmed from the fact that many alleged werewolves would be left feeling weak and debilitated after committing depredations. In medieval Europe, traditionally, there are 3 methods one can use to cure a victim of lycanthropy. Medicinally, usually via the use of, guess which herb?
Wolfsbane?
There you go. The
Classic.
bane of the wolf. Surgically or by exorcism. However, many of the cures advocated by medieval medical practitioners proved fatal to the patients. Or did they? What if curing werewolfism was so exhausting it also killed the patient, but the cure did technically work? A Sicilian belief of Arabic origins holds that a werewolf can be cured of its ailment by striking it on the forehead or scalp with a knife. So it says striking, not stabbing. So it's just like a smack with the flat edge of the knife. Is that what that is?
Yeah, that would do it.
Another belief from the same culture involves the piercing of the werewolf's hands with nails. Uh-oh, that sounds like a crucifixion to me. Were they just really trying to cure Jesus of lycanthropy? Is that why they nailed him to the cross?
Yeah, could very well be the case.
That sounds like another movie that needs to be made. Or as Maxwell would say, that would make a good movie. When Jesus was a werewolf.
Back when Jesus did werewolf things.
Sometimes less extreme methods were used. In the German lowlands of Schleswig-Holstein, a werewolf could be cured if one were to simply address it 3 times by its Christian name, while one Danish belief holds that merely scolding a werewolf will cure it. So all you gotta do is say bad dog.
Yes, or bad Jonathan Michael Emerson.
Conversion to Christianity is also a common method of removing lycanthropy in the medieval period. Can you imagine, like, some werewolf is just getting a baptism in the river, like, just to cure it of being a werewolf?
Again, this is one of those times, obviously this answer was coming during the era where, again, Christianity was big and all other supernatural kind of oddities and maladies would be easily cured, again, by either baptism or prayer or the cross or a mantra spoken.
A devotion to Saint Hubert has also been cited as both cure for and protection from lycanthropes. Connection to revenants. Before the end of the 19th century, the Greeks believed that the corpses of werewolves, if not destroyed, would return to life in the form of wolves or hyenas which prowled battlefields, drinking the blood of dying soldiers. In the same vein, in some in some rural areas of Germany, Poland, and northern France, it was once believed that the people who died in mortal sin came back to life as blood-drinking wolves. These undead werewolves, here we go, we got zombie werewolves, would return to their human corpse form at daylight. So that's curious. So these werewolves went from corpse to werewolf back to corpse since they weren't living. So basically, a werewolf could be a zombie werewolf or a regular werewolf. They, again, Hollywood, missed opportunities here. They were dealt with by decapitation with a spade and exorcism by the parish priest. The head would then be thrown into the stream where the weight of its sins was thought to weigh it down.
Wow.
Sometimes the same methods used to dispose of ordinary vampires would be used. The vampire was also linked to the werewolf in the East European countries, particularly Bulgaria, Serbia, and Slovenia. In Serbia, the werewolf and vampire are known collectively as the Volkodlak. Hungary and the Balkans. In Hungarian folklore, the werewolves used to live specifically in the region of Transdanubia, and it was thought that the ability to change into a wolf was obtained in the infant age after the suffering of abuse by the parents or by a curse. At the age of 7, the boy or the girl leaves the house, goes hunting by night, and can change to a person or wolf whenever he wants. Wow, so it's popular for 7-year-old boys and girls to go hunting randomly at night? That's weird.
Very odd.
I would think they would want to wait till the kid was a little older before learning how to hunt, especially at night. But the curse can also be obtained when in adulthood the person passed 3 times through an arc made of a birch with the help of a wild rose's spine. The werewolves were known to exterminate all kind of farm animals, especially sheep. The transformation usually occurred during the winter solstice, Easter, and a full moon. How come there are no were sheep? Like you turn into a sheep?
Good.
You know what would be cool? An extraterrestrial interdimensional chupacabra were sheep hybrid knight that was a zombie and died and came back in ghost form.
I mean, we can escalate. So yeah.
Later in the 17th and 18th century, the trials in Hungary not only were actually Hungary seems like a good place for werewolves because they're always hungry. That kind of makes sense. The trials in Hungary not only were conducted against witches, but against werewolves too, and many records exist creating connections between both kinds. Also, the vampire and werewolves are closely related in Hungary, being both feared in antiquity. Also, werewolves. I mean, actually, if the country was named Thirsty, that'd be more appropriate for vampires. But Hungary's pretty good for werewolves and zombies, I guess. There should be more zombie movies set in Hungary, don't you think?
I don't see why not.
Among the
missed opportunities.
Among the South Slavs and also along the ethnic Kashubian people in present-day northern Poland, there was the belief that if a child was born with hair, a birthmark, or a cowl on their head, they were supposed to possess shape-shifting ability. Though capable of turning into any animal they wished, it was commonly believed that such people preferred to turn into a wolf. That's interesting mythology there too, because it's not that they're a werewolf by necessity, they're a werewolf by choice, and they really could turn into anything. So if we're going by the skinwalker type legends and myths, if you're some kind of sorcerer or have magical powers, theoretically you could do any animal, but for whatever reason they just preferred the wolf.
Very interesting.
Would that be your preference? I mean, I would think Bigfoot would be more popular. I don't know.
I can't lie, I am impartial to wolves.
You know what would be cool? A Bigfoot chupacabra hybrid.
Unless you find out that the chupacabra is actually Bigfoot.
Well, there are some theories that say it is, but it's usually described as being much smaller, or like some kind of deformed hyena, or chihuahua, actually, like a bigger version of a rabid chihuahua. Serbian Volkodlaks traditionally had the habit of congregating annually in the winter months when they would strip off their wolf skins and hang them from trees. They would then get a hold of another Volkodlak skin and burn it, releasing it from its curse, the Volkodlak from whom the skin came. The Caucasus, according to Armenian lore, there are women, in consequence of deadly sins, are condemned to spend 7 years in wolf form. In a typical account, a condemned woman is visited by a wolfskin-toting spirit who orders her to wear the skin, which causes her to acquire frightful cravings for human flesh soon after. There we have the human flesh cravings again. With her better nature overcome, the she-wolf devours each of her own children, then her relatives' children, in order of relationship, and finally the children of strangers. So it's very strict about which children in what order. She wanders only at night with doors and locks springing open at her approach. Wow, I actually haven't heard that nuance in mythology before. For example, with the vampire, it's the opposite. They're not let in unless you invite them. But with this particular legend, the woman, the cursed woman in werewolf form, as soon as she gets anywhere near a door or window, it automatically opens. That's actually terrifying. Why haven't they used that in horror movies? That's crazy.
I've never heard the concept. I might have wondered if they might have depicted some things without ever making that reference known.
This is Armenian lore. When morning arrives, she reverts to human form and removes her wolf skin. The transformation is generally said to be involuntary, but there are alternate versions involving voluntary metamorphosis where the woman can transform at will. So if they ever made that into a movie, it should end with a court trial, and her defense is just lycanthropy. And they're like, how did you open all the doors and windows? They were like locked by like 10 deadbolts on the inside. And she was just like, they magically open at my approach. Americas and Caribbean. The Naskapis believe that the caribou afterlife is guarded by giant wolves which kill careless hunters venturing too near. The Navajo people feared witchcraft in wolf's clothing called mycob. Woodward thought that these beliefs were due to the Norse colonization of the Americas. When the European colonization of the Americas occurred, the pioneers brought their own werewolf folklore with them, and were later influenced by the lore of their neighboring colonies and those of the natives. Belief in the loup-garou, present in Canada, the upper and lower peninsulas of Michigan, and upstate New York, originates from French folklore, influenced by Native American stories on the Wendigo. In Mexico, there is a belief in a creature called the Nagal. In Haiti, there is a superstition that werewolf spirits known locally as Jarouge, red eyes, can possess the body of unwitting persons and nightly transform them into cannibalistic lupine creatures. Okay, let me get this straight. So there's the Haitian variation is that there are spirits, so like demonic spirits. So you get possessed and then turn into a werewolf. So you're possessed into becoming a werewolf.
Oh wow!
Hollywood. Why are you sleeping?
So the possession might have been used in Hollywood.
The Haitian Jarouge typically try to trick mothers into giving away their children voluntarily by waking them at night and asking their permission to take their child, to which the disoriented mother might either reply yes or no. Oh, that's dark. That's dark and twisted. That kind of aligns with the non-violation of free will principle, where demons and demonic spirits can do whatever they want as long as the humans give permission.
It is a messed up scenario.
And so they always try to be tricky. So they wake up the mothers in the middle of the night when they don't know what's going on. This is crazy. The Haitian Jarouge differ from traditional European werewolves by their habit of actively trying to spread their lycanthropic condition to others, much like vampires. So these entities that possess and turn others into werewolves, they want to spread it like a plague, zombie style. Wow. That's crazy.
That's a big crazy.
Well, this is MindShock, where we go down every single rabbit hole, every single theory. So let's move on to modern reception, werewolf fiction. Most modern fiction describes werewolves as vulnerable to silver weapons and highly resistant to other injuries. And you know what's curious? The silver origins, silver actually is a natural antiviral and antibacterial compound. It's very antiviral and antibacterial. For people that know about the health remedy of colloidal silver, it does kill a lot of germs and pathogens of all kinds. And that's kind of curious that that's what's used to kill werewolves. Also, garlic is also very, very antibacterial.
Huh. Well, again, this is why they again like to use some of these as more of a disease, like some sort of like viral affliction or bacterial affliction. Again, thus by what is it? Bite. Is usually how they be
Well,
transferred.
what if we're thinking about it the wrong way? What if all of these pathogens are demonic in origin, and that's why these substances are effective instead of the other way around? And these substances are actually spiritual substances, and we're only looking at a tiny piece of the puzzle in the physical manifestation of the pathogen being neutralized, when the true root cause is the demonic nature.
Well, that would definitely work in the church's favor. That's at least, especially during that time, because that's how it would be described.
So, modern fiction describes werewolves as vulnerable to silver weapons and highly resistant to other injuries. This feature appears in German folklore of the 19th century. The claim that the beast of Gevaudan, an 18th century wolf or wolf-like creature, was shot by a silver bullet appears to have been introduced by novelists retelling the story from 1935 onwards, and not in earlier versions. English folklore, prior to 1865, showed shapeshifters to be vulnerable to silver. Till the publican shot a silver bullet, not Republican, just publican. The quote here, till the publican, is that just like a random man of the public? Shot a silver button over their heads, and they were instantly transformed into two ill-favored old ladies? What the heck? Oh, so they were old ladies that were shapeshifters, and then there was a silver button shot over their heads, and they had to transform back. Circa 1640, the city of Greifswald, Germany, was infested by werewolves. Quote, a clever lad suggested that they gather all their silver buttons, goblets, belt buckles, and so forth, melt them down into bullets for their muskets and pistols. This time they slaughtered the creatures and rid Greifswald of the lycanthrope. The 1897 novel Dracula and the short story Dracula's Guest, both written by Bram Stoker, drew on earlier mythologies of werewolves and similar legendary demons and, quote, was to voice the anxieties of an age, end quote, and the, quote, fears of late Victorian patriarchy, end quote. In Dracula's Guest, a band of military horsemen coming to the aid of the protagonist chase off Dracula, depicted as a great wolf, stating the only way to kill it is by a sacred bullet. So wait a second. So is Dracula a werewolf?
Well, I thought they had linked up at one point for certain lores where silver would work on both werewolves and vampires, or in fact, it would work on any negative supernatural.
Well, you know what's curious? Dracula and other vampires are sometimes depicted as able to shapeshift into a bat.
So again,
yeah, would there be a version? You know what's weird though? How come there's not a were-bat where it's a human non-vampire? Like why are only vampires able to shapeshift into bats? Why wouldn't a non-vampire be able to shapeshift into a bat? I mean, these are the hard questions that people need to ask during Halloween. These are the important questions then.
If you didn't know, Bruce, I can't lie. I am an avid gamer, and one of the classic games I used to play as a child was called Bloody Roar, where they did involve a person who could transform into a bat.
That is very cool.
So, yes,
but it was a non-vampire?
Non-vampire.
That is curious. But if vampires can transform into bats, why wouldn't they also be able to transform into wolves? And I guess that's what they're getting at here with Dracula's Guest. Is Dracula also a werewolf? So are there these werewolf vampires? I mean, these mythologies do seem to be linked. And just in all of these cultures and folklores, there does seem to be a link. So let's continue here. This is also mentioned in the main novel Dracula as well. Count Dracula stated in the novel that legends of werewolves originated from his Selkeli racial bloodline, who himself is also depicted with the ability to shapeshift into a wolf at will during the night, but is unable to do so during the day except at noon. I actually don't remember that from Dracula. Do you remember that? So Dracula is able to shapeshift into a wolf, and he can't do that during the day except for some reason at noon. He can only do it at noon. So is that during noon hour or noon minute only? That doesn't specify.
That's very intriguing. Though it makes you wonder now if because of this particular lore here, why the game Castlevania decided to give his son the ability to shapeshift not only into a bat, but also into a wolf and also into mist. So,
definitely, because according to this novel here, this is one of his bloodlines, is the werewolf bloodline. This actually makes Underworld make more sense as well for fans of the Underworld films.
Indeed.
The 1928 novel The Wolf's Bride, A Tale from Estonia, written by the Finnish author Aino Kallas, tells the story of the forester Pridik's wife, Aulo, living in Haimaa in the 17th century, who became a werewolf under the influence of a malevolent forest spirit also known as Diabolus silvarum. What a name. Diabolus. The first feature film to use an anthropomorphic werewolf was Werewolf in London, 1935.
Very classic.
The main werewolf of this film is a dapper London scientist, dapper, who retains some of his style and most of his human features after his transformation. As lead actor, Henry Hull was unwilling to spend long hours being made up by makeup artist Jack Pierce. Universal Studios drew on a Balkan tale of a plant associated with lycanthropy, as there was no literary work to draw upon, unlike the case with vampires. There is no reference to silver nor other aspects of werewolf lore, such as cannibalism. A more tragic character is Lawrence Talbot, played by Lon Chaney Jr. in 1941's The Wolfman. With Pierce's makeup more elaborate this time, the movie catapulted the werewolf into public consciousness. Sympathetic portrayals are few but notable, such as the comedic but tortured protagonist David Naughton in An American Werewolf in
London, yes.
and a less anguished and more confident and charismatic Jack Nicholson in the 1994 film Wolf.
Well, yeah.
He should have played that character in The Departed. Don't you think that would have made it a better movie?
It would have been impressive.
Over time, or even in Batman, Joker should have been a werewolf. Wouldn't that be better?
I'm pretty sure there's some what if comics in DC where Joker probably is a werewolf.
Yeah, but Jack Nicholson as the werewolf would be. I think that's what would make it interesting. Over time, the depiction of werewolves has gone from fully malevolent to even heroic creatures such as Underworld, Twilight series, as well as Blood Lad, Dance in the Vampire Bund, Rosario and Vampire, and various other movies, anime, manga, and comic book. Other werewolves are decidedly more willful and malevolent, such as those in the novel The Howling and its subsequent sequels and film adaptations. The form a werewolf assumes was generally anthropomorphic in early films such as The Wolfman and Werewolf of London, but a larger and more powerful wolf in many later films. Werewolves are often depicted as immune to damage caused by ordinary weapons, being vulnerable only to silver objects, such as a silver-tipped cane, bullet, or blade. What about like a silver watch? What if you just like punched him with a silver watch or silver brass knuckle?
Could work.
The attribute was first adopted cinematically in The Wolfman. This negative reaction to silver is sometimes so strong that the mere touch of the metal on a werewolf's skin will cause burns. Current-day werewolf fiction almost exclusively involves lycanthropy being either a hereditary condition or being transmitted like an infectious disease by the bite of another werewolf. In some fiction, however, the power of the werewolf extends to human form, such as invulnerability to conventional injury due to the healing factor, superhuman speed and strength, and falling on their feet from high falls. Also, aggressiveness and animalistic urges may be intensified and more difficult to control, such as hunger and sexual arousal. Usually in these cases, the abilities are diminished in human form. In other fiction, it can be cured by medicine men or antidotes. Along with the vulnerability to the silver bullet, the full moon being the cause of the transformation only became part of the depiction of werewolves on a widespread basis in the 20th century. The first movie to feature the transformative effect of the full moon was Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman in 1943.
Oh, wow.
Werewolves are typically envisioned as working-class monsters, often being low in socioeconomic status, although they can represent a variety of social classes and at times were seen as a way of representing aristocratic decadence during 19th century horror literature. Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany used werewolf, W-E-R-W-O-L-F, as the mythical creature's name is spelled in German in 1942 to 1943 as the code name for one of Hitler's headquarters. In the war's final days, the Operation Werewolf aimed at creating a commando force that would operate behind enemy lines as the Allies advanced through Germany itself. Two fictional depictions of Operation Werewolf, the U.S. television series True Blood and the 2012 novel Wolf Hunter by J.L. Bennett, mix the two meanings of werewolf by depicting the 1945 die-hard Nazi commandos as being actual werewolves. There's an opportunity that Hollywood didn't miss.
No, you're not.
Okay, so there we have it. That is the rundown on werewolf mythology, the origins of various folkloric explanations and variations. So, what do you think, Sid Irwin? If werewolves were real, obviously that doesn't mean they're real now, but it is kind of curious that werewolves and vampires are inextricably tied together, and they might have just been bloodlines of ancient demons if one believes in that, and these are just various manifestations of these ancient demonic forces.
It's definitely very interesting perspective. A lot of very interesting perspectives, theories, creations, lores. I have to admit, there's a lot of material just to take from. Except it makes you wonder, exactly which ones are truly believable.
Do you have any favorite movies, video games, comic books on werewolves you'd like to share with the audience?
It's a list. I can't lie. Though, I'll go with recent things. I did like particular. I thought it was an interesting depiction as of late for most of the books I've listened to when it comes to werewolves. They actually really rather depict them as again four-legged creatures, aka man truly turning into a wolf, or if not a larger wolf compared to the regular type, as opposed to the traditional ones I'm used to growing up with, which was the bipedal werewolf.
That's definitely cool.
Yeah, so I've been intrigued and have liked those concepts as they've done it so far. Though I did like the way Underworld did a certain thing. I think I particularly like that due to the interesting factor of saying that again it is kind of more of an infectious disease spread, but it's based on the fact that these random twins or whether brothers had a certain genetic aspect to them that was different than most other humans, where again if they had gotten bitten by a certain creature, somehow it transformed them into a half human half creature hybrid, which was a very interesting take I had not heard or seen before. So again, that was also a very interesting step to set up for werewolves. Beyond that, I can't really say much else particularly for that topic.
All right, here's my best idea for a costume for this Halloween.
I'm listening.
A Bigfoot, Chupacabra, mermaid, werewolf, hybrid knight. Obviously, extraterrestrial, interdimensional, zombie ghost version. So if you're out this Halloween and you see everyone walking around in that costume, you know where the idea came from. Hope you guys enjoyed a Halloween edition of the MindShock podcast, delving into myths, legends, with logic and reason at the forefront, unlike any other podcast, upturning every stone regarding this werewolf myth, which may or may not be real. You can draw your own conclusions. Just make sure you do them in a logical fashion and not fallaciously. And so have a happy and safe Halloween out there. If you enjoy the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. You could also like and share the podcast across social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. You could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing out.
And Sid Irwin.
Catch you guys next time.